All right, welcome everybody to week 13, day 3. Today we're going to be talking about code reviews. Code reviews are what happens at most large or professional computer science organizations. They don't allow you to just make a change to Microsoft Word and deploy it to the world without anybody looking at it. Usually you want to have different sets of eyes signing off on, looking at, reviewing the code that you're proposing to put into Microsoft Word or World of Warcraft or some of these big products. What you're doing here, where you just are a person doing development, compiling it, running it, testing it. Yeah, maybe you could do that in a small, like one-person house or something like that. But if you're in a large company, they generally want to look at your code before they make it part of Windows or something like that. So we did code reviews for Pokemon in the 12 o'clock class, and we'll do it for you guys as well. And what happened was I found a bug in the student's code, and I was like, oh, you're not testing for this. And the dude was like, there's no input tester for it. So why should I test for it? And I was like, touche. And that's actually an important point. If you find a bug and there's no test for it, you need to make a test for it. That's part of the whole process, right? I was like, yes, I do. And so I just added 2 new test cases for you guys. And what was happening was, let me just become Mincarelli and cd into Pokemon, and let's look at this code. And so down here, you can see what the problem is. So the lookup code is making a blank Pokemon, and then it's going to go through every Pokemon named Poke in the Pokemon database. So for every Pokemon in the Pokemon database, if it gets a match on the index, so the user types in the index, like I want 150 or Mewtwo or whatever, Mew or Mewtwo, whichever one 150 is, 151. And then it goes through, and if it ever gets a match, then it sets this blank Pokemon gets set to be a copy of the Pokemon from the database. And then it prints out the index and name and things like that. There's a problem, which is that if the user types in like 400 and 400 is not in there, then let me show you what happens. So we run the code, want to use the Gen 1 database, print the Pokemon data, give me index 400. It should print out invalid input, right? And so I think he has a check in here. Yeah. So he is doing a check, which will work on the Gen 1 database because the Gen 1 Pokemon are all contiguous, monotonically increasing Pokedex numbers. There's an off by 1 if you're not careful, because the Pokemon start at index 1 instead of index 0. But I think that covers it. But for the open-ended one, it won't work. And so if we cat public Pokemon input file 8, if we run the code, do we want to use the Gen Pokemon? No. So if I want to open up the extended Pokemon list and the extended types list and the extended moves list and print Pokemon data for like 157, that one actually exists. Okay, let's actually find a number that's going to cause us to break. So if we go down to like 163, for example. Nope. Copy in these 2 files here, and the moves file here. What was the number I just said? 163. Okay. 163. Let's try this one more time. Let's try 213. Okay. No. Damn it. One more time. Run this. Run this. Pokemon data for 213. Invalid input, but there is a Pokemon 213. We have added Shuckle to the Pokemon database here. Shuckle has a Pokedex number of 213, but it's saying it's not there despite it being there. So that's a bug. So what you need to do is you need to go through the entire set of Pokemon, and if you get a match, then you can display the information on the Pokemon. If you don't get a match, then you have to print error. Okay. And in 41, you're going to learn a better way of doing this. You might learn a better way of doing this next week as well. Maybe. We'll see. But for now, we'll just do this. Okay, so you're going to run through the whole thing here. And if it didn't find anybody, so if the Pokemon is still set to be like index 0 or something like that, then you just die. And so there's one check you have to add for that, and one check you have to add for moves, and then you should pass the test cases. Okay. So, but that's how the development process works. And that came about through code review. So we'll do a code review on Min Corelli's code here. I've already fixed a lot of the things. So I'm going to put it back the way it was before. So in his class that he made, he had no constructor and no initializers for the integers. You don't need them for strings, but you do need to do this for integers. So one of the students in the 12 o'clock class did this, which was fine, I guess, but you don't need to. Strings will initialize themselves to empty strings. It's only primitives, ints, floats, doubles, bools, chars, shorts that don't initialize themselves. For pretty much anything else, like a vector or a string, which is all you know right now, they will initialize themselves. And so you don't need to initialize string, name equals empty string. You don't need to do that. It'll initialize itself to an empty string. But integers should be. Now, Min Corelli, in his defense, was going to be writing a constructor. Constructor is a function that will initialize the variables in the class, and he hadn't gotten around to it yet. So I just added them there as a safety measure. One of the students in the 12 o'clock class forgot or didn't see that I had made a global, which is not great coding practice, but whatever, a variable called Pokemon DB that is a vector of all the Pokemon, and that's the database you're supposed to stick stuff into. And then if we look at his code here, he was having trouble with the ... thing for some reason. I was wondering if it had anything to do with like the ellipsis character. So Word and things like that will make a single character. This is not 3 characters. This is 1 character, right? And so sometimes, like if you copy and paste, it'll actually make a single character ... And I was just curious if that was the problem. I don't know if it was or not, but so what he had here was exception, like that, or exception like that, which, yeah, for all intents and purposes, is the same thing as that. His code is basically functional. All this obviously works correctly. He passed all 10 of the test cases, the original 10 at least. He reads a line. He reads, so he makes a line. He reads until the end of the line. You don't need this if you did get line without the new line character. It reads until the new line character. So I would probably clean that up a little bit. He then turns that line into a string stream. He then proceeds to read into one variable over and over again. It's a little bit different from how most students did it, but it's fine. You don't have to make multiple variables that way. So he reads a string in, and then if the error occurred, he breaks. Now the first thing is the Poke index number, so he converts that string to integer. Then he reads into the string called detail again, and that's the name, so he doesn't need to string to integer it. He just copies it in. Then he reads again, and so he's reading one tab of data at a time out of this row, and if ever an error occurs, he quits, essentially, the reading process. So this is the process that you want to go through for doing the input. Okay, so for this assignment, you needed to make a class, and you needed to make a move class, and read into the moves and things like that as well. Equals shift 5 to indent all that stuff. And so if he ever does a stoy on anything that is like a hyphen, because remember some of the things don't have like power and things like that. They just have a hyphen. So if you try converting the hyphen into an integer, it throws an exception. And so that makes for a very nice thing. Here we can just say, continue, go back up to the top. Technically, continue does nothing here because it's at the bottom, so it goes up to the top of the loop anyway, but just to make it clear. So if any error occurs in this, then it throws and it just skips that line. It does not make it to the bottom here. So all the students that I saw that took this approach succeeded. There were some students that were trying to do it with like double right arrow, and it got very, very complicated and messy because Mr. Mime, for example, is 2 words, and so the code was like you see in a word, and then if the next word is has a digit, then that goes into HP, but if it's not, then it adds to the name, and the logic becomes very, very complicated when you have to handle all the different possible ways that you could have Pokemon with like 5 different names and things like that. So essentially what our code was doing was reading words until a number was found. And once a number was found, it put it into HP and moved on. But it didn't handle like the Camilla bug Pokemon because there are no integers in there. So it was like infinite looping and things like that. So it's a tricky thing to handle if you don't do it the proper way. So I'm going to give you guys till Monday to fix up your code. Get it 12 out of 12 by Monday, and yeah. So so code reviews. So the way that it works, and they're kind of fun to watch. Like I found a video of my friend sort of doing code review at Microsoft, and he kind of stands up in front of a whiteboard, and they have all the whiteboard, and people just sit there and they look at it, and they look at the source code, and people like, there's an off by 1 error in that. Not my friends, but just in general, like, there's an off by 1 error right there. You shouldn't do that. Or, if you pass in an empty vector, that's going to segfault because you're reading the first element out of it without checking to see if it was empty. And so everybody looks at it and they debug it effectively together. But then at a higher level, they'll also do things like say, well, I don't know if we should add that feature to Microsoft Office. Do we really need a Pokemon mini game inside of Microsoft Office, or whatever, so there's discussions that take place at a variety of levels, ranging from that's a bug, you should change that, to is this a feature we want to have, or is this a direction we want to go for .NET? Are we going to move more in this direction? Is the style of this matching the style of the rest of our language? And if it's not, is that the direction we're going in? And so these code reviews have they're honestly like kind of fun to watch because you get to see the thought process and how they're thinking, and they'll like video conference people in from Spain, and they're all looking at my friend's code together, and he's just kind of standing there like, you have any questions? But they're just like talking amongst themselves, like, I don't know if we want, do we want this feature? Like, is this good for .NET? I don't know. And so code reviews are like, there's something you need to like kind of get comfortable with and get used to. So in a second, I'm going to pause the stream here, and I'm going to do a code review with some of the students on here, and it'll hopefully show you guys kind of like what the process is. It's a positive thing, like it's not negative. Like what we're trying to do is we're going to try and figure out why your code has bugs in it, right? And fix the bugs and get you squared away so that on Monday you get a 10 out of 10 on it. So it's actually a really good thing, especially if you're not getting a 10 out of 10, right? And I'm going to pick students that are not getting a 10 out of 10 so that you get the benefit of having 30 sets of eyes staring at your code. And if anybody sees the bug, and I'm not going to display student code on YouTube here, I'm going to pause it. So everybody who's not doing a code review, I want you looking at the code. And if I say there's a bug there, I want you to look at it and be like, that's, tell me what the bug is. Okay, I'm gonna highlight a line where there's a bug, and it's gonna be your job in the audience to, I'm like swinging this ruler around. My daughter left this on my mouse pad, so it's my new weapon. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight a line where there's a bug, and then the people in chat, you guys are gonna have to tell me what the bug is, okay, and how to fix it. Does it sound like fun? And then the person who's doing the code review, I'll also ask questions like, what was your intention for this? Why did you do it this way? Explain to me what this code means, that kind of stuff. That's standard code review kind of stuff. So I'm going to pause the recording now, and we'll do some code reviews, and then we'll move on to some more debugging stuff in a bit. Okay, so did a code review of my code too, and found out that my code in there is actually using double right arrow, not the get line method that is correct. And so I created a test case based on a bug that I found in a student's code. The student's code was thinking that all POCA index numbers have to be contiguous to each other, but they don't have to be. So you can have like 151 followed by like 213, and their thing would report an error if it's out of bounds when it's not. It's a valid Pokemon. And so you have to go through all the Pokemon, and if any of them has a valid match, then you output its data. If none of them have that Pokedex number, then you die. You print bad input. Whatever. Okay, you guys understand? So that's basically what code reviews are about. You stand up in front of a group of people, and they hopefully give you positive feedback, and they go through your code. If you have ever read about like the space shuttle and things like that, like they never had any programming issues with the space shuttle because they scrutinized it so heavily. It had to go through multiple levels of review, and everything from like your local project lead to like everybody had to look at it and sign off on it. And people would be like, well, what if that's a 0? What if this comes in too fast? What if there's a rounding error here? And they would just scrutinize that code with all sorts of levels of precision. And even after that, they would run the code on 4 CPUs. And so 3 CPUs would run the same copy of the code, and they would vote on which one's right. And if any one CPU started giving different answers, they would pull that CPU out and use the results of the other 2. If one of the other 2 started disagreeing, they'd pull that out, and they would use the 4th CPU, which was coded by a completely different team under the same rigorous protocol, but a completely different software product, because they figured that if there was some lethal bug that was causing unpredictable behavior like that, it probably wouldn't be in the exact same spot. So they had 4 CPUs, 3 voting together, and then 1 running the exact same computation by a different company at the same time, and they never had any issues with it. So they actually even carried like a 5th CPU as backup, but what happened was they never needed it, so they stopped carrying it. So Space Shuttle is a pretty successful example of computer science gone right. It was the engineers, ironically enough, that caused the problems with the O-rings and things like that froze and exploded, and a loose tile knocking a hole in the wing and stuff like that. But the software was actually pretty solid on it. So code reviews, yeah, good stuff. Get used to doing them. If you're going to be working at a big company, it's really important to be able to stand up and defend your code and explain what you're doing and have people find bugs in it, like we just did right there. And if you find a bug that's not being tested for in the test cases, you make a test case for it, so it'll pop up. So okay, so that was a little spiel on code reviews. The next thing we're going to talk about is debugging. We're going to do more debugging practice. This will be done on Monday. Most students got it done in class, and so you're going to basically have till the end of class today to work on this. You can work on it with a partner, with a buddy. Also, if you want to sign up for Pokemon Part 2 groups, that's going to start on Monday. I'll deploy Pokemon Part 2 on Monday. But you can sign up for groups right now if you want to get ready for that. So each of these midterm, there's midterm 40 D, E, and F. These used to be things I gave on a midterm. It was a timed event. They're not supposed to be hard problems. You're supposed to be able to figure them out pretty quickly. That said, like there's a lot of trolling going on. Like Mincarelli and I sat down today and tried to come up with the most trollish bugs we can think of for you guys to find. For example, anyone know why this semicolon here isn't working? What's the matter with this code? It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It is in fact a Greek question mark. Yes, that's uh, that might be the clue there. So I have indeed done the Greek question mark prank on you guys here. That's a free one from me to you. That is not a semicolon. It looks like a semicolon. It's not a semicolon. And so the next one has something kind of equally trollish on it. And then the logic bugs are also fairly humorous as well. I'm not going to tell you what those are, but basically, the code is supposed to be printing, you know, a number to the screen, and it's printing X instead. Who knows why it is doing that? Who knows? It's on the screen somewhere. It's up to you to find the bug and fix it, and then move on to 40E and move on to 40F. There is an input tester for 40E, and normally I don't do input testers for these debugging assignments because I really want you to look at the documentation and be able to test it yourself, because that's really something that I want you to do. And when you have an input tester, you just run the input tester. But yeah, that's fine. I want you to actually to very carefully look at the README files and run it and make sure that the numbers you're getting match the numbers you're supposed to get, things like that. But for 40E, midterm 40E, I made an input tester because it uses files that are in the public directory, and you wouldn't know which files to use otherwise. So, it's like, how do you test it if you don't know where the files are? So, I don't know. So it just seemed easier to me to just write an input tester for that one. So that one, you can type input tester and it'll tell you if you're doing it right or not. It's still trollish. There's still trolling going on. It's my primary motivation for teaching, is being able to troll students. So at 5 o'clock, there is a extra credit talk given by Voss on Tmux, the terminal multiplexer, which allows you to split your screen inside a PuTTY and do different things with it. You can disconnect and reconnect to it, all sorts of cool stuff. And next Saturday, meditation workshop again at noon, Woodward Park. If you haven't submitted your essays for the Halloween party and the meditation workshop, make sure you do that. I extended that through like Monday. So make sure you get your extra credit for that. And that's basically it for today. So you're going to be doing some lab time right now on these 3 debugging assignments. So if you become Mancarelli, you see they're called 40D, 40E, 40F. Each one of them should cause you to laugh. It should cause you to cry. It should entertain you and depress you at the same time, if it's done right. Or maybe you'll just find the Greek question mark immediately because I've told it to you. Hopefully you will be at least mildly amused by the trollish bugs that we put into those 3 assignments there for you. Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and you guys got the rest of the time period to work. You remembered one thing at least? Yeah. I was sitting there like going to like Unicode, like trying to find like, what symbols I could use, and stuff like that. You hate debugging? Well, good. So this is good for you then, because finding bugs is a really important skill to have. Like, you need to be able to very quickly go like, that's wrong, fix it, and then move on. Because if you don't, then you spend 8 hours of your life beating your head into your table like, why is this not working? Why is this not working? And you're not coding, right? You're not getting anything done. You're just wasting time. And so that's why I do these debugging exercises with you, so you can like figure out what's wrong and get experience. It's a skill that you have to build and you have to exercise on. And that's why I do these with you, so that you can like look at the code and be like, what's it doing? What should it be doing? Run it through GDB or see out all the things and figure out, that's the bug. And the more you do this, the quicker you will get at it. And the more time you can, the more time you spend debugging, the faster you get at debugging. And then the more time you can spend actually coding and developing and making new stuff, rather than being like, why is this not working? I don't get it, And in real life, nobody's going to put a Greek question mark onto your code or whatever. Like, to be fair, some of these are a little bit trollish, but some of them are absolutely bugs that I have done myself. Copy paste errors, and I don't want to give it away, but there's a copy paste error, at least in one of them. Very common mistake. You copy and paste a line, you forget to change one of the things to a thing, and then your code doesn't work right, or it runs forever, and you're sad. So, yeah. So this will be good for you. got this warning, but it ended up being good. So if you are getting a integer comparison warning, you can kind of ignore that. Integers should not be compared with unsigned integers because it won't work above 2 billion. But we don't have 2 billion Pokemon, so it's fine. You can. That's one of the few. I mean, I fix it, but like in the greater scheme of things, it's one of the least important warnings. When it'll yell at you if you compare an int and an unsigned int. In the greater scheme of things, it's not that important. But you should fix it. But it's also not that important. We don't have 2 billion Pokemon yet. No, I mean Indigo is coming out, right? So who knows? They do seem to like adding a lot of Pokemon, but it takes a while to come up with good pun names for them, right? Like Embror, Infernape, Primeape. Primeape is a great name. It is. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the recording now, and I will hang out while you guys work on this. If you have any questions about the midterm questions, feel free to ask. I might not answer because they're for you to find out, but maybe I'll give you hints or something. All right, see ya.